even though we've been doing this for so many years, despite all the experience, I go to each wedding feeling nervous, still. The scale of our operation is dependent on the size of the event typically. So it really can vary between a team of 3 to sometimes a team of 5. We call it fantasy and reality. So the fantasy being the couple portraits that look like they're from a fashion magazine. And they're inspired by, maybe movie scenes or actually from fashion or art and architecture and, that sort of thing. The reality is actually just pure documentary. It's capturing what we see and what we feel in front of us. Asian weddings are different because of the scale, the amount of culture and history that goes into it. We are at the high end of the sector, basically. We've always targeted the bigger, elaborate clients with a larger budget. We market ourselves as a luxury brand. People are always amazed with how much equipment we turn up with. We've got 3 1DX Mark IIs and 3 1DX Mark Is, and probably about 15 different L-series lenses. My go-to is the 1DX Mark IIs with a 7200 on one side, and I usually start with the 2470 Mark II on the other. The 1DX is a performance machine. It's incredibly quick. So I didn't know what to expect from the EOS R. As far as weddings go, this was probably the most elaborate of the year. I think the wedding itself had something like 700 or 800 people. The EOS R arrived the day of the wedding, and I had that morning to customize both cameras and get to know them. But what fascinated me was how easy they were to actually, customize, but how familiar they were. Customization is critical in what we do. Mainly I think because as creatives we all work in different ways, but also we all have muscle memory. And if there isn't the customization, it can hinder the way you work, particularly if you need to switch between a photojournalistic brain to a portrait brain, to a landscape brain, to a sports photographer brain. And you can actually have a little bit of all of those at a wedding. We were going from day to night. And the wedding itself was in changeable conditions because the marquee was transparent, the sun was going in and out. It was hot, and we're on our feet for 16 hours. We're always open to the emotion of the day, as well as just observing what's going on, but the emotion is a key thing, and that'll lead us. So when you can see that there's some kind of engagement emotionally between people, there are parts of the ceremony which kind of slow down, and you'll catch an expression or you'll catch eye contact or something like that. I was using the eye focusing pretty much all the way through, which was awesome because it meant that I could shoot quite wide open, more wide open than I'd be used to shooting. With a 51.2, with older lenses I might steer clear of 1.2, but here I was happy just to stay at 1.2 and it would nail the focus every single time. My approach when I'm shooting is to generally underexpose by a third or two. I always protect the highlights because there's a lot more latitude in the shadows. I create contrast with lighting, rather than actually bumping up contrast in post-production later on. But the dynamic range is a key thing. I want it to look as realistic and human-like as possible, because our eyes can see so many more stops of dynamic range than the camera can. I think there's a perception that, if you're a pro, then your equipment needs to be bigger. And I think we've all fallen for that at some stage as well, but I think that's going away. If I was going to take anything from the EOS R and put it into the 1DX, it would be the size, the weight, the EVF, being able to see all that information and review the image as I'm shooting, the silent shutter, an articulated screen, that was fantastic. The single card slot issue, I think, has been blown out of proportion. Technology is so much more reliable than it's ever been, and SD technology is so much more reliable than it's ever been. So the fact that the EOS R has one card slot isn't a problem. I think wedding photography has been stigmatized in the past. I still think there's a perception that wedding photography is what it used to be in the 80s. But I think that's shifted massively. I think it's become actually quite a cool thing for people to want to do. Because weddings themselves have changed. They've become so much more elaborate and complex. what we do is so valuable. It's creating a legacy for that couple and their family, their kids, their grandkids, forever. The bride lost her mother when she was probably 13 or 14, and I can relate to that. I lost my mum when I was 15. So I'm very sensitive to these things as well, and that's why photographs are so important to me, actually. And it's one of the things that we try to explain to brides and grooms when they come to see us, that their photographs will be priceless to them in the future, because we will all lose somebody along the way. You know, they just don't know it yet.